Then I am gone, nah, hit enter and it's gone, nah, spit me out a video like this in just one click. So for example, here I've got this clip of me being all like shaky. I am gone, nah, upload that, and then I am gone, nah, use the AI tool to stabilize my hand movements. And it's not perfect, but it does a really good job of smoothing out the Now this is super useful if you want to create something like a screen recording or a whiteboard animation. You can also upload your own video and then use this AI tool to help you edit it. And the best thing is this is completely free to use. There are some limitations, but for the most part it's free to use. So go ahead and check it out. Are you ready to meet another amazing historical figure? Good. Let's start. Picture yourself stepping into a museum filled with mummies and sarcophagi, surrounded by hieroglyphic-covered walls and colossal statues. Can you almost feel the dry desert air on your skin and hear the echoes of ancient voices in your ears? Now imagine standing before a sarcophagus, its surface intricately carved with scenes from the afterlife. This is the tomb of Thutmose III, a pharaoh whose accomplishments were rivaled only by his ambitious building projects. Now let's transport ourselves back to the early 19th century. Known for his expertise in the medical arts, Alexander has earned the trust of the elite, including Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. You watch as merchant ships unload their treasures, bringing riches from distant lands. Inside, you discover a courtyard adorned with a fountain and surrounded by vibrant frescoes depicting idyllic landscapes and mythological scenes. It's here that you find a small shrine dedicated to Bastet, the Egyptian goddess associated with cats in the home. Could this be evidence of the growing popularity of Egyptian cults in Roman society? Here amidst the rustling leaves and murmuring streams, you witness the practice of a form of divination involving the inspection of animal entrails. As we return to the present, we hope you've enjoyed exploring the intriguing question, what happened to cats in the afterlife? We began our adventure in the company of Thothmes III, the pharaoh Ramses, the pigeon, and the curious habit of burying cats with their owners. We then crossed paths with the legendary Cleopatra and her beloved cat, whose unusual demise led us on a trail of mystery and intrigue. Our expedition took us through ancient Egyptian burial chambers and Roman villas, revealing the deep connection these civilizations had with the feline world. We also delved into the world of haruspices, seeking their guidance on the fate of cats in the afterlife. Through it all, we gained insight into the beliefs and practices surrounding death, the supernatural, and the role of cats in human society. And if you want to continue this incredible journey, well, just click right here for another incredible adventure. See you soon. Specifically, the entrails of pigs or other sacrificial animals were examined for signs and omens related to the will of the gods. It was believed that by interpreting these natural signs, priests could gain insight into the future and advise mortals on matters of great importance. Could the Greeks have turned to haruspicy to determine the fate of cats in the afterlife, seeking guidance on how to honor their place in the lives of mortals? Among these exotic goods are chests filled with mysterious artifacts, including intricately carved sarcophagi and strange amulets. The scene is so lifelike that you can almost hear the rhythmic pounding of the baker at work. Outside, on a street corner, you see an inscription on a marble column advertising the services of a barber surgeon. Gaius, could this skilled practitioner have been called upon to treat the ailments of both humans and cats? Could some of these items hold clues to the fate of the missing cats? One day, Cleopatra seeks out Alexander's help, troubled by a persistent cough that refuses to go away. As he examines her, noticing her listless appearance and pale complexion, he suspects a more serious issue at play. You find yourself strolling through London, dodging horse-drawn carriages and street vendors as you make your way to the British Museum. As you gaze upon the grand monument, you wonder about the rituals and customs surrounding death and the afterlife in Greek society. Was there a special place in their burials for the hero's loyal feline companion? There, amidst the bustling crowds, you spot a peculiar exhibit, a mummified cat wrapped in linen band. Can you see the mischievous glint in its eyes as it seems to peer back at you? This isn't just any cat, though. It belonged to the wealthy and powerful Kate Sheldon, a woman whose love for animals was as boundless as her wealth. Our journey takes us next to ancient Egypt, specifically to the royal mummy's room in the Egyptian Museum of Cairo. In this dimly lit chamber, you come face to face with a series of sarcophagi containing the mummified remains of Egypt's most revered pharaohs. As your eyes adjust to the shadows, you can make out the faded hieroglyphs adorning the coffins, each one telling tales of divine kingship and eternal life. Among these pharaohs is Ramses the pigeon, a ruler known not only for his military victories but also for his peculiar habit of keeping pet pigeons. Could these very birds have ended up entombed alongside him, sharing in his quest for immortality? Our adventure continues to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Here you stand before a display of ancient Egyptian funerary objects. Among them is a small statue of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the afterlife, guiding souls to the underworld. But it's another artifact that catches your attention, a simple amulet depicting a cat's head. Could this unassuming piece hold the key to understanding the Egyptians' fascination with felines and their role in the afterlife? In the bustling city of Alexandria, home to the legendary Library of Alexandria, we meet the renowned physician Alexander of Trino. The path leads us to Rome, where you find yourself at the bustling port, the air thick with the scent of salt and spices. Your journey brings you to the renowned house of the Viti in Pompeii, a Roman villa frozen in time by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. As you explore the ruins, you stumble upon a bakery, its ovens still stocked with loaves of bread and the mortar and pestle lying beside sacks of flour. You find yourself in the heart of ancient Thebes, standing before the legendary tomb of legendary hero and founder of the city, Cadmus. Our journey concludes in the sacred grove of Dodona, home to the most important sanctuary of Zeus in the ancient Greek world. And with that ends our journey through time and civilizations. The year is 1348 and Europe is dying. Plague is raging across the continent, killing tens of thousands every day. But for the moment, you're safe here in your village. Your little community seems untouched by the pestilence, at least for now. So you go about your daily routine, greeting neighbors on your way to market, haggling over prices for fresh bread and cheese, helping your husband repair a roof or mend a fence. Life is hard, yes, but it's good. You have your family, your friends, your faith. What more could you want? But soon a shadow falls over your village. A merchant comes in from the south, looking haggard, feverish. He can't stay long, he says, but he needs help. His wife and children are dying back at the inn, he says, and he begs the local priest to bless them and grant them absolution. The priest visits him, but there's nothing he can do. There are no medicines or treatments that will save the man or his family. The only thing he can offer them is spiritual comfort. And soon the merchant joins his family in death, and then others start dying too. Villagers come down with fevers, aches, painful swellings in their armpits and groin, and black spots that grow larger and fester. Some recover, but many die, and those who live find themselves changed by their experience. Now, if you've ever gone through something like this, you know that life will never be quite the same again. When people are faced with mass death, when they see their loved ones fall victim to an unstoppable killer, when they feel their own mortality hanging in the balance, everything changes. And that's exactly what happened in medieval Europe during the Black Death. So in today's video, we're going to explore how the plague transformed medieval culture. It's me. Welcome to my channel. Now when I say that everything changed during the Black Death, I don't mean just how villagers felt. Their lives literally changed. This was actually really difficult because the land around most villages was owned by nobles, and they didn't want their fields and pastures defiled by plague victims. See, before the plague, peasants were required to plant certain crops, regardless of whether or not there was demand for them. Most of these were so-called domain crops, which were grown on land owned by the lord and worked by the peasant. That phrase came into use in the 19th century, popularized by Don Simmons' novel The Stand. Prior to that, the disease was known as the pestilence or the plague. But after the plague pandemic, Europeans developed a kind of collective amnesia. They forgot that millions of people had died just a few hundred years ago, until it happened again in the 17th century. When people were once again confronted with mass death, they began to call the disease the Black Death, presumably because they thought that the worst was behind them. That phrase then slipped into our subconscious and stayed there. Only a few centuries later, when writers like Shakespeare and Boccaccio wrote about the Black Death, they too used different names for it. Shakespeare called it the pestilence and Boccaccio called it the Great Mortality. But even in their day, people were forgetting why they had experienced such massive death. For example, John of Burgundy wrote a book called The Chronicle of England, France, and Scotland, and he wrote about the Great Mortality, but he didn't say that it was a plague. He thought it was a punishment from God for the sins of the clergy. These typically included 2/3 of the land sown to grain, usually wheat, barley, and oats, plus a portion of the land reserved for sowing legumes like peas and beans. So what do you think? How did the Black Death change medieval culture? Let me know your thoughts and thanks for watching. But all this changed during the plague, because the thing about these crops was that they were unparticularly valuable. Peasants could barely earn enough money from them to cover the cost of seed and tools, let alone provide a living wage. So, after the plague, when villagers were desperate for cash, they stopped growing these crops and instead grew more valuable cash crops like hemp, flax, and especially wool. Wool was particularly profitable because it could be sold in the international market, which was much more lucrative than selling to local nobles. By the end of the 14th century, many villagers were making enough money from wool to become full-fledged market towns. The result was that sometimes corpses were buried in mass graves or even thrown into rivers or the sea. Before the Black Death, religion was something separate from everyday life. Religion was the province of priests and monks and popes. Regular people went to church on Sunday and holy days, listened to a sermon, confessed their sins, and received communion. But otherwise, they lived their lives pretty much unaffected by the church. After the plague, though, this all changed. First, the massive amount of death and suffering led many people to question their relationship with God. They asked, did God allow so much death and suffering? Was he just too merciful to punish the wicked or too weak to stop the plague? Others decided that God simply wasn't worth the effort anymore. Why bother praying or repenting? They thought. if God was just going to kill you anyway. Others turned to more extreme forms of worship. Some flagellants wandered the countryside, beating themselves as penance for their sins. Flagellants were groups of men who traveled from town to town, whipping themselves in public, as a sign of devotion and a way of begging for goddess mercy. Many people joined these groups after the plague because they felt that the world was coming to an end and they needed to repent. Still, others sought a deeper personal relationship with God. People began holding prayer meetings in their homes, singing hymns and reading the Bible in vernacular languages. Some groups would even hold communion services in private homes, because they didn't trust the priests who had survived the plague. It was unusual for villagers to wade into a river to get drinking water and come out covered in the bodies of the dead. Imagine how that would make you feel. Well, the horror of plague deaths motivated some villagers to build purpose-built cemeteries outside of town. Over time, these became full-fledged cemeteries with elaborate monuments and chapels. You might have walked past one on your way to market. They had to adjust to the aftermath of mass death, change their relationships, their economy, their religious practices, even their everyday speech. And all of this was part of what scholars call cultural trauma, which happens when a society experiences a sudden, shocking, catastrophic event that takes an enormous toll on human life. Of course, COVID was a cultural trauma for us, but other examples include the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the Oklahoma City bombing. So how did the Black Death transform medieval culture? Well, for starters, after plague hit a village, people had to deal with the plague also had a profound impact on how people farmed. Even more importantly, maybe, the plague also changed how people prayed. Finally, the plague also changed how people talked. Did you know that the bubonic plague is commonly called the Black Death? And there you have it. The Black Death killed millions of Europeans, destroyed economies, and forever altered how people prayed and even spoke. Welcome back. Before the days of modern medicine, medieval folk healers practiced a blend of science and folklore to treat ailments. Their methods may seem strange today, but they offer a fascinating glimpse into the past. Let's delve into some common medieval treatments and uncover these stories behind them. Number 10. Wearing charms and amulets. Throughout history, humans have turned to charms and amulets for protection against evil spirits and bad luck. This practice was no different during the Middle Ages. People believed that certain objects had the power to ward off evil influences that caused illness. They used a wide range of plants to treat various ailments, from common colds to more serious conditions. This plant was said to have powerful healing properties, but it was also associated with dark folklore and superstition. The mandrake root was believed to have a human-like shape, and this led to the belief that it screamed when removed from the ground. Medieval folk healers often used natural springs and wells as sources of healing water. These stones were typically found in the stomachs of animals such as goats, and were highly prized for their supposed medicinal qualities. This beetle was known to cause blisters on the skin and was used as a treatment for various ailments, including rheumatism and gout. The use of scents for healing purposes dates back to ancient times, and medieval folk healers were no exception. While some of these practices may seem bizarre by today's standards, they were rooted in the beliefs and superstitions of the time. From charms and amulets to herbal remedies and mysterious plants, medieval folk healers used a variety of methods to treat ailments and promote healing. The use of bloodletting, tremolite and pilgrimage water were common practices, as were the use of bezoars and blister beetles as cures for specific conditions. Scents and aromatherapy were also highly regarded as a way to soothe the body and mind. Overall, the world of medieval folk healing was a unique and fascinating one, shaped by the beliefs and practices of a bygone era. They believed that certain scents could have a powerful impact on the body and mind and were often used in conjunction with other healing methods. Popular scents like lavender and sage were believed to have calming and soothing properties. Medieval healers would use these scents to help relax patients, reduce anxiety, and promote overall well-being. They would often burn incense or boil herbs to release the scent into the air, or they would create scented oils or balms to be applied topically. While the use of aromatherapy in modern medicine is now well established, it was a common practice during the medieval period as well. Despite its painful reputation, the blister beetle was highly regarded for its ability to relieve joint pain and inflammation. Medieval healers would apply crushed blister beetles to the affected areas, causing a blistering effect that was believed to draw out impurities and promote healing. Although this treatment was undoubtedly painful, it was considered to be an effective way to alleviate the discomfort caused by these conditions. In the Middle Ages, poisoning was a common concern, and people believed that bezoars could provide protection against poisonous substances. They were often carried on the person or kept in the home as a way to prevent or cure poisoning. Believed that the bezoar could absorb or counteract the effects of poison, providing relief to those who had been exposed to it. While there is no scientific evidence to support the use of bezoars as a cure for poisoning, they were widely used and believed to be effective during the medieval period. It was believed that the water from these sources had special healing properties and could cure various ailments. In particular, water from holy wells or springs located near churches or shrines were highly regarded. Pilgrims would travel to these sites, often walking long distances, to collect the water and take it back to their homes. They believed that by using this water, they could benefit from the healing powers of the saints or other religious figures associated with the location. This practice was deeply rooted in the Christian faith and was an important aspect of medieval culture. To avoid being harmed by its scream, medieval healers took precautions when harvesting the root. They would tie the mandrake to a black dog and distract it with food before pulling the root from the soil. This was done to prevent the mandrake from causing harm to those who heard it scream. Despite the danger, mandrake was highly valued for its medicinal uses, and its mystique only added to its allure. Some popular herbs used during this time included lavender for relaxation, chamomile for sleep aid, and rosemary for pain relief. During the Middle Ages, there was a belief that the power of touch could be used to heal the sick. This practice, known as Tremolite, involved laying hands on a patient to cure ailments and drive out evil spirits. Those who practiced Tremolite were believed to have special healing powers and were often called upon to help those who were ill. The process typically involved the healer placing their hands on the affected area or the entire body while reciting prayers or incantations. It was believed that through this touch, the healer could channel a divine energy that could bring about healing. While this may seem like a mystical practice, Tremolite was a significant part of medieval folk healing and was used alongside other treatments to alleviate pain and suffering. Healers believed that each plant had unique healing powers and they used them in various forms, such as teas, tinctures, or This knowledge was often passed down through generations, and healers were highly respected in their communities for their expertise in herbal medicine. Their use of plants not only helped people cope with physical ailments, but also provided solace and comfort. Simple charms could be worn for everyday protection, such as small pouches filled with herbs or a simple red string bracelet. For more serious ailments, more powerful amulets might be used, such as those containing relics of saints, holy water, or other sacred symbols. These amulets weren't just worn for protection, but also as a way to connect with the divine. By carrying a charm or amulet, people believed they had a tangible link to the saints or other spiritual beings they revered. This connection provided comfort and hope in times of illness and hardship. 9 Incantations and the power of words. Medieval folk healers believed that the power of words could be used to heal the sick. Incantations and spells were often used in conjunction with charms and amulets to enhance their effectiveness. For example, a healer might chant a prayer or verse over a patient while placing a hand on their forehead or holding an amulet over them. It was believed that the combination of words and objects could drive out evil spirits or negative energy that was causing the illness. These incantations were not merely rote recitations, but were seen as a way to tap into a deeper spiritual energy that could promote healing. The act of speaking these words aloud was believed to have the power to transform negative energy into positive energy, leading to physical and emotional restoration. Number 8. Bloodletting and the balance of humors. One of the most common medical practices of the Middle Ages was blood. This involved the practice of removing blood from the body to cure various ailments. Medieval healers believed that the body was governed by 4 humors, and an imbalance of these humors could lead to illness. Bloodletting was used to restore balance by removing an excess of blood. This could be done through methods such as leeching, where leeches were applied to the skin, or by lancing, where a small incision was made to allow blood to flow out. While bloodletting may seem gruesome today, it was widely believed to be a necessary and effective treatment for a range of illnesses. It was seen as a way to purge the body of impurities and restore the balance of humors, which was essential for good health. 7 Herbal remedies and the lore of plants. Medieval folk healers had a deep knowledge of herbs and their medicinal properties. Number 6 Mandrake and its mysterious powers. One of the most fascinating and feared plants used by medieval folk healers was the mandrake. Number 5 Tremolite and the power of touch. Number 4 Pilgrimage water and the healing waters. 3 Bezoars, a stone against poison. Zors were natural or artificial substances that were believed to have the ability to neutralize poison. 2 Blister beetle and the painful remedy. One of the most unusual remedies used by medieval folk healers was the blister beetle. Number 1 Lavender and sage. Scents and aromatherapy. These medieval treatments offer a fascinating glimpse into a time when the boundaries between medicine, magic, and religion were blurred. Thank you for watching. See you next time. What would a nobleman's sick room look like? What sorts of remedies would his physician employ? Let us now drift away from smoky cottages and forest paths and enter a grand stone hall. Sconces in the walls are lit by dozens of beeswax candles, flickering in golden pools of light upon polished stone floors. Through tall arched windows, heavy woolen hangings keep out the evening chill. Here lies a noble lord upon an ornately carved bed. His sheets are of fine linen, embroidered with silken threads. At his side stands a physician, robed in deep blue, lined with expensive fur, his pointed cap stiff with embroidery. On a small table beside him rest books bound in calfskin, their pages illuminated with red and blue letters. Treatments for the nobility were often complex, layered with both genuine medical learning and ostentatious displays of wealth and power. If the lord suffered from melancholy, believed to stem from an excess of black bile, his physician might prescribe a syrup made from violets, borage flowers, and sugar, imported at great expense from the Eastern Mediterranean. There, sugar was considered a powerful medicinal substance, warm and moist in its nature, able to strengthen the heart and soften the stomach. If his humors were deemed blocked, a purge might be administered. This could include electuaries, thick sweet pastes made from herbs, honey and powdered minerals that were formed into small balls and taken with wine to clear the bowels and restore balance. The recipe book of the royal physician John of Burgundy contains over 270 recipes, many including sugar and spices in addition to more commonplace ingredients such as henbane and cinnamon. If sugar was too costly, then cheaper alternatives such as figs or flaxseed were sometimes substituted. These remedies were not merely for consumption. However, one recipe instructs the physician to make 2 electuaries, one for internal use, another for external application, rubbed on the stomach to aid its function. Treatments for the wealthy and powerful were not merely about healing, but also about display. An apothecary chest, usually kept in the corner of a noble's sick room, displayed not only an array of remedies, but also the wealth and status of its owner. Whilst poorer patients might have to make do with a single blanket on their bed, the nobility could afford far more comfort. Their beds were large, often raised on 4 posts, and were normally draped with fine linen and woolen coverings. Sometimes they were even surmounted by elaborately carved canopies. There was no lack of pillows either, made of linen, hemp, wool, or down, sometimes even perfumed with herbs or wine. But the apothecary chest was not the only place where luxury items were displayed. The most expensive remedies themselves were sometimes presented in vessels of gold, silver, or crystal, whilst poorer patients would have to make do with more modest earthenware or wooden bowls. For example, for the treatment of coughs, one recipe calls for the patient to boil fennel aniseed, long pepper and ginger in vinegar, and then strain the mixture through linen cloth into a silver or crystal vessel. Then let the patient drink it whilst it is still hot. Noble treatments also frequently involved bloodletting, which was often conducted with silver lancets or leeches. In grand chambers, a silver dish lined with linen held dozens of glistening black leeches. A servant, guided by the physician, would place them upon the lord's skin, watching as they latched on and darkened with blood. The leeches were then removed, washed in wine, and stored for future use. For the nobility, treatments also included baths, infused with herbs and flowers. Large wooden tubs lined with linen were filled with warm water scented with rose petals, lavender. The lord or lady would sink into these fragrant waters, steam curling upwards in the flickering candlelight, as their physicians and attendants murmured gentle reassurances of their restorative powers. Despite all these refinements, many treatments were similar in principle to those of the village healer: bloodletting, purging, herbal infusions, and prayer. The difference lay in the trappings: gold bowls instead of wooden ones, sugar syrups instead of simple honey, learned physicians quoting Galen instead of wise women quoting generations of memory. It was a grand affair, the business of healing a nobleman, and yet sometimes it was quite lonely. For all the skill of his physicians, for all the luxury of his bed, the nobleman might find himself utterly alone when the sickness pressed hardest. The nobility had means to protect them from most illnesses, but there were some, like the plague, that could overcome even the finest defenses. Even princes could die, and sometimes the whole court with them. When King Edward VI died in 1553 at the age of only 15, he took with him 5 members of his privy, one of whom, the young Marquis of Winchester, died in exactly the same way as the king, raising suspicions of foul play. Though, ultimately, the post-mortem examinations carried out on the pair were nonetheless thorough, demonstrating a desire to understand the causes of death, even among the most elite of society. Let us now imagine a grand medieval bedchamber. The curtains are drawn, shutting out the grey light of a winter afternoon. The nobleman lies upon his bed, wrapped in fine linens. Beside him stand 2 men, a priest in somber black robes, holding a crucifix aloft, and a physician, his face creased with concern. On the nightstand beside the bed, a crystal ewer stands empty, drained to the last of its lavender-scented water. On the other side, a silver basin waits to be filled. The air is thick with the smell of camphor and wood smoke, incense meant to purify the room, but unable to mask the coppery temps of blood. The nobleman coughs, a rattling sound that echoes in the vast chamber. The priest lays a comforting hand on the nobleman's arm, murmuring prayers for his soul. The physician feels for a pulse, his brow furrowed in concentration. Outside, the wind rises, rattling the window panes and whipping the rain into furious swirls. Inside, the fire burns low, casting flickering shadows on the wall. On the bed, the nobleman stirs, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The priest leans closer, his eyes shining with fervent devotion. The physician reaches for a silver syringe filled with a dark liquid. This was a common sight in the sick rooms of the nobility in the Middle Ages, a blend of faith and science in the face of death. The nobleman groans, his face pale and drawn. The physician straightens, his gaze fixed on the nobleman's chest. He listens intently, his expression grave. The room is silent save for the howling wind and the crackling fire. The nobleman's breathing grows more labored. The priest continues his litany, his voice rising in fervor. The physician shakes his head, his face etched with grim understanding. The nobleman's breath hitches, then stops. The priest presses on, his voice ringing with the power of God. Outside, the storm rages, but within these 4 stone walls, all is silent save for the beating of a single heart, the heart of the dying nobleman. As the minutes pass, the storm outside reaches a crescendo, mimicking the turmoil within. The nobleman's breaths come in quick succession, shallow gasps for air. His eyes, wide and unseeing, stare into the flickering flames of the hearth. The priest's voice booms, echoing the tumult of the heavens. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the nobleman's struggle for breath ceases. His chest, moments before heaving with exertion, becomes still. The room, heavy with the scent of lavender, camphor and incense, falls silent. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the wall. The priest, his face etched with sympathy, lays a comforting hand on the nobleman's shoulder. The physician, his face grave, withdraws to a corner of the room. The storm outside reaches its peak, shaking the very foundations of the house. Within the silent chamber, the nobleman lies still, his breathing shallow and slow. The physician, his face creased with concern, examines the nobleman's tongue. The priest, his eyes closed in prayer, murmurs words of comfort. The room is dimly lit, the shadows cast by the hearth fire flickering and dancing on the walls. The nobleman coughs, a rattling sound that echoes in the vast space. The physician straightens, his brow furrowed in thought. The storm rages outside, the wind howling like a wounded beast. The nobleman stirs, his eyes fluttering open. The priest, his face breaking into a smile, offers the nobleman a chalice. The nobleman, his voice weak, murmurs a prayer. The physician reaches for a linen cloth, his hand steady. The fire burns brightly, casting a warm glow on the faces of the 3 men gathered around the nobleman's bed. Outside, the storm begins to subside, the wind dying down to a mournful sigh. The nobleman's breathing becomes more regular, his face less pale. The priest continues his vigil, his eyes closed in prayer. The physician, his face etched with fatigue, leans back in his chair. The fire on the hearth burns low, casting long shadows in the fading light. The nobleman lies still, his breathing soft and even. The priest, his voice gentle, murmurs words of comfort. The physician watches, his face grave, his eyes filled with concern. The storm has passed, leaving behind a heavy silence broken only by the soft crackle of the fire and the rhythmic rise and fall of the nobleman's chest. And so as our journey through the strangest medical practices of the Middle Ages comes to its gentle close, imagine yourself drifting back through time, past the flickering candles of noble halls, past the herbal scents of monastery gardens, past forest paths, trodden by quiet healers gathering dawn herbs. Feel the comforting contrast between that world and your own. The year's 1485. Flickering candlelight dances on the faces of the elite gathered here. Tonight, a celebration is in full swing. Summoned by a whispered prayer, he rises, pulls on his robe and walks into the night. The friar, Brother Thomas, is known for his skill in the art of medicine. He carries with him not just prayers, but a pouch filled with herbs and simples. As dawn breaks, he stands before the queen, ready to offer his aid. The fate of the queen, the king, and the kingdom itself hangs in the balance. Will the power of the old ways prevail against the emerging forces of science? Or will reason triumph over superstition? What will history record? The miracle of a medieval healer or the advancement of modern medicine? Only time will tell. Music fills the air, laughter echoes, and the aroma of roasted boar mingles with the sweet scent of spiced wine. Amidst this merriment a sudden hush falls. The queen, radiant in her finery, collapses. Gasps ripple through the crowd. A chill seeps into the joyous hall as men skilled in the art of bloodletting rush to her side. They work with practiced hands, determined to save the queen. But as the night deepens, so does the worry etched on their faces. The queen's life hangs in the balance. Where once they lay upon straw-stuffed mattresses beneath rough wool blankets, you rest now upon soft bedding, warm and safe. Where once illness carried fear and helplessness, today knowledge and care ease pain and restore strength. Allow these quiet images to settle within you like falling leaves upon a still pond. The rhythm of their lives of faith and struggle, of herbs and prayers, becomes a distant echo. Let your breathing soften, your eyelids grow heavy, and your mind drift beyond words into peaceful rest. Thank you for joining me tonight. Sleep well, and dream of quiet halls lit with candlelight, where wise voices speak softly of remedies, and where the strange, calm world of the past fades gently into the comfort of your present. Now close your eyes if you please, and let the sound of my voice guide you on a journey through time. A journey back to a world where the line between healing and harm was sometimes blurred, where remedies were as mysterious as the ailments they addressed, and where the human body was a landscape as strange and wondrous as any medieval physician might have imagined. Picture this, a grand hall in a noble's residence. Meanwhile, In a distant monastery, a friar stirs from his slumber.